Welcome back to Economics in Room 8. We finished up Chapter 4 on demand, and so now we are in Chapter 5 looking at supply. Now, the instructor will be passing out some papers to you that we will take a look at here in a little while. But before we do, let's get a little introduction to what it is that we will be covering here for the next couple weeks. So, supply. What are our objectives right here? We want to understand the difference between the supply schedule and the supply curve, explain how market curves are derived, specify the reasons for a change in supply. All right, so our main idea is this. For almost any good or service, the higher the price, the larger the quantity that will be offered for sale. So we have to look at it from a different viewpoint now. We have to look at it as though we're selling rather than buying. And when we sell things, naturally, we want to get as much money as we can for that particular product. And so suppliers are always looking to get the highest price. And if the price is high, they're going to supply more. Think about your own situation. If we were paying you to study economics every night, and say we were paying you $20 an hour to do that, would you study more? Yes, you would. Of course you would. So, here's some of the terms that we'll be looking at. Now, this particular section, this is Chapter 5-1, and Chapter 5-1 covers everything about supply in one section that Chapter 4 covered in demand in 3 sections. So there's a lot of stuff in this particular section here, everything from supply, change in quantity supplied, change in supply, and supply elasticity is all covered in Section 5-1. So it's going to be busy, a lot of material to cover here. So we'll cover this over a number of these videos. We'll take our time and get through it. So let's start off with here, nice introduction, and take a look at the supply schedule and the supply curve, and maybe a little compare and contrast with what we covered in Chapter 4 on demand. All right. So here we have a supply schedule and a supply curve, but let's start with the schedule here. Remember, a schedule is a listing of those items that would be demanded or supplied at a particular price. So here, supply schedule, we have a price. Notice that at a price of $30, there's 8, and at a price of 5, 0. So more is supplied at a higher price. Now, let's do a quick retake of the previous chapter. Here was that demand schedule that we used. Let me get this over so we can see both of them. There we go. So here's Chapter 4. And notice that a price of $30, 0 quantity demanded, but at a price of $30 over here, quantity supplied is 8. So it's just the opposite. Let's take a look at what the graph would look like. There's our demand curve that comes from that schedule. And remember that it was downward sloping, left to right. And now if we graph this information, let's see what we have here. Looks just a little different. Looks, oh, it's upward sloping left to right. See that? Let me zoom out just a little bit here. Okay, so moving left to right, it's upward sloping because the higher the price, there's my price. That's what I wanted to see. Higher the price, more supplied. Just the opposite. See, take a look at that $25. At $25, supply, quantity supplied is 7. At $25, what's the demand? Answer that question. What's the demand? Yes, 0. So it's just the opposite. Well, let's go ahead and do some practice here. Take a look at the handout. And the first one you have there is the note guide that has been created for you. Oh, there's that question I was just discussing. If you were paid for economics, how much would you study? Would you study more for $20 an hour or more for $1 an hour? Clearly. And you could take this to any particular type of task. The more you're paid, generally, the more you are willing to do. Okay, so this lists all the vocabulary that we have, and as we move through this and have further discussions, you may want to add some additional notes. And so for the first couple days, we're going to stay right in this area right here, and then we'll move on to a change in supply. But right now, we're going to talk about change in quantity supplied, not a change in supply. That comes later. Change in quantity supplied. So that's your note guide. And then the other handout is a graph. So we'll practice graphing supply. So here we go. Once again, we've got our shoe store. The owner of the local shoe store has reviewed her cost to determine how many pairs of running shoes she would be willing to supply each month at different prices. So here's her research, and we've seen this schedule before. Just now that instead of quantity demanded, we've got quantity supplied. And so we're going to graph this here on our supply curve. And then do make sure that you answer these questions. You can either type up your answers and attach them, or you can use whatever available space there is to write your answers out. With complete sentences, of course. Now, when you're putting this together, remember, price, where does price go? Going to go on the X or the Y? Yes, we're going to put it over here on the Y-axis. So price is right here. Now, when in doubt, what should you do? Well, there's always the book. Yep, you can always look at the book, or, of course, once again, review our handy presentation here. But there you go. Price on the Y, quantity supplied on the X. And, once again, use as much of this real estate space as possible. You don't want to make a little tiny curve. And so the way you can do that is there's about 20 of these horizontal lines here, and we need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We need 5 values. And so if we have about 20 of these, about 5 of those, 20, 5 values divided by 4. So we could probably split that 20 into 4 different spaces. And so just do it like this. Go, let's see, 1, 2, 3. Okay, good, right there. Let's put 30 at that location. So that'd be 30, and then skip, 40, skip, 50, skip, 60, skip, 70. And so if your 70 is up there, looks like about the 20th line, then when we draw that curve, it'll look pretty good. And you can do the same thing here. All right, so you're going to go from 20 to 100. And don't avoid putting 100 here. We've had that happen before. People put their scale going decreasing. Well, we don't want to do that. It creates a funny looking curve. So remember, your first value, of course, is going to be 20. So you can do the same thing. So something like 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. How many do we need to go to? 80, 100. So that should just about do it. Looks like you could skip about every 2. Let's see what that is. Skip 2. 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. I think you could skip 4. So work that out. Just use as much space as possible. And go ahead and create your supply curve. And then I will be around the room to help you out with that and take a look at it. And I will see you in the next exciting Room 8 video, Chapter 5, Supply.